It all started with a phone call from Linda, my neighbor. She sounded worried, more than usual. "You need to come home right now," she said, her voice trembling. "There's something happening on your land." I was working as a county inspector that day, checking permits and making sure buildings followed the rules. My job kept me busy, but Linda's tone made me drop everything. I told my boss I had an emergency and rushed back to Maplewood Court. When I turned onto my street, my heart sank. Behind my backyard fence, where there used to be an empty lot, chaos reigned. Bulldozers moved dirt, workers shouted instructions, and piles of materials cluttered what had once been peaceful open space. At first glance, it looked like some kind of construction project. But when I got closer, I saw something unthinkable, a gas station taking shape. The huge sign leaned against a stack of metal beams. Asterisk, Maplewood Fuel Stop, coming soon. Asterisk, my mouth went dry. This wasn't just any piece of land. It was mine. The lot behind my house belonged to me, legally and completely. How could someone build here without my permission? Linda came running up to me, her face pale. "They showed up yesterday morning," she explained quickly. "They said they had approval." I tried to ask questions, but they wouldn't let me near. Approval? For my property? My mind raced. Who gave them the right to do this? What if they thought no one would notice because the lot had been empty for so long? Or worse, what if they knew exactly whose land it was? I stood there frozen, staring at the scene before me. Workers hammered away at wooden frames while trucks dumped loads of gravel. It felt surreal, like watching strangers invade my home. Anger bubbled inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed answers, not accusations. The next morning, still fuming, I decided to investigate further. At work, I slipped into the records room during lunch break. No one paid much attention. I did this kind of thing every day as part of my job. But this time, I wasn't reviewing permits for other people's projects. I was looking into my own case. I pulled up the deed to my property. Sure enough, it confirmed what I already knew. The land was mine. There were no shared agreements, no easements allowing others to use it. Nothing. So how could anyone justify building a gas station there? Then I found something shocking. Buried in old municipal files was a document submitted by the Maplewood Court Homeowners Association, HOA. They'd requested permission to build a commercial fueling station next to residential areas. And guess what? Their proposal included my parcel number. The application had been denied months ago because it broke zoning laws. Yet here we were, with bulldozers tearing up my land anyway. My hands shook as I read through the details. This wasn't just carelessness, it was deliberate. Someone high up must have greenlit this project, despite knowing it was illegal. Maybe they assumed I wouldn't find out, or maybe they thought I'd be too scared to fight back. Either way, they were wrong. As a county inspector, I knew the rules better than most. If anything, this situation put me in the perfect position to hold them accountable. Still, standing there surrounded by paperwork, I couldn't help but wonder, why target me? Was it random, or was there more to this story? Whatever the reason, one thing was clear. They'd picked the wrong person to mess with. The more I dug into the situation, the angrier I became. It wasn't just about my property anymore. It was about how far the HOA had gone to push their agenda. Sitting in the records room at work, I couldn't believe what I was uncovering. Every document seemed like another piece of a puzzle that painted an ugly picture: greed, arrogance, and blatant disregard for the law. I started with the basics: zoning laws. According to city regulations, building a gas station next to residential homes required special permits due to environmental concerns and safety risks. Those permits weren't easy to get because they involved multiple inspections, public hearings, and approvals from various departments. And yet, here was the HOA trying to bypass all of that by simply ignoring the rules. What shocked me even more was the timeline. Their application had been submitted months ago, long before this construction began. When it got rejected, they didn't appeal or try again. They just moved forward as if nothing had happened. No second chances, no revised plans. They acted like the rejection didn't matter because they thought they could do whatever they wanted. As I sifted through the files, I noticed something else odd. The HOA's proposal included not only my lot but also parts of other neighbors' properties. At first glance, it looked like a mistake, a sloppy oversight. But when I cross-referenced those parcels with ownership records, I realized something chilling. Every single one belonged to people who either worked outside town or rarely spent time at home. In short, they targeted owners who might not notice or care until it was too late. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. It was calculated. These weren't just empty lots waiting to be developed. They were carefully chosen based on vulnerability. If someone traveled frequently or lived elsewhere most of the year, they'd likely miss the signs of illegal activity. By the time they found out, the damage would already be done. And then there was me. Unlike some of the other affected homeowners, I lived here full-time. Not only that, but I understood zoning laws inside and out thanks to my job. Maybe the HOA assumed I'd stay quiet because I didn't want trouble, or maybe they figured I'd leave once the construction started, letting them finish without interference. Either way, they underestimated me. Big time. Back at home, later that evening, I paced around my living room, replaying everything in my mind. How could they think this was okay? Who gave them the authority to decide what happened to private land? The questions swirled endlessly, each one fueling my determination to fight back. But I knew I couldn't do it alone. If I wanted to stop this, I needed help from my neighbors, from colleagues, maybe even from higher-ups in local government. Still, reaching out meant risking backlash. Word travels fast in small communities like Maplewood Court, and crossing the HOA wasn't exactly a popular move. People depended on them for things like maintenance fees and community events. Going against them could make me a target. Despite the risks, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For years, I heard whispers about the HOA overstepping boundaries, imposing unreasonable fines, micromanaging minor details, intimidating residents into compliance. Most people shrugged it off, chalking it up to how things are. But now, seeing firsthand how far they'd go to serve their own interests, I couldn't stay silent. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't let them get away with this, not on my watch. I grabbed a notebook and started jotting down ideas, gather evidence, talk to neighbors, file complaints with city officials. Each step felt daunting, but together, they formed a plan, a way to hold them accountable. As I wrote, I glanced out the window toward the construction site. The lights were still on, casting eerie shadows across the half-built structure. Workers moved back and forth, oblivious to the storm brewing nearby. Little did they know, their days of operating unchecked were numbered. Tomorrow, I told myself, I'd confront them head-on. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. The next morning, I woke up with a mix of nerves and determination. I knew today was the day I had to face them directly. No more hiding behind documents or second-guessing myself. This wasn't just about my property anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. If I didn't act now, who would? After grabbing a quick cup of coffee to steady my nerves, I drove straight to the construction site. My car screeched slightly as I parked it squarely in front of the entrance, blocking one of the bulldozers from moving forward. Workers paused mid-task, their eyes darting between me and the vehicle. Some looked annoyed, others curious, but none stepped forward to challenge me. I climbed out of the car, clutching my clipboard tightly like it was some kind of shield. The foreman, a burly man with dirt-streaked jeans and a hard hat, was shouting instructions into a walkie-talkie when he noticed me approaching. His expression shifted instantly from irritation to suspicion. "Can I help you?" he barked, his tone anything but friendly. "Yes," I replied firmly, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You can tell me who gave you permission to build on this lot." He blinked, clearly caught off guard by my directness. For a moment, he hesitated, glancing around as if searching for backup. Then, regaining his composure, he shrugged dismissively. "Lady, we're following orders. You'll have to take it up with the HOA." I took a step closer, refusing to back down. "Orders don't matter if they're illegal. This is private property, and you're operating without proper permits. Stop all work immediately, or I'll file formal complaints with the city and state authorities." His jaw tightened, and I could see him weighing his options. He didn't know me personally, but he must have recognized the authority in my voice, the confidence that came from years of inspecting projects just like this one. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he muttered something into his radio and signaled for the crew to halt operations. Relief washed over me, but only briefly, because as I turned to survey the scene, I spotted Mrs. Wexler standing near the edge of the site, arms crossed and lips pressed into a thin line. She'd been watching the entire exchange silently, waiting for her moment to strike. She approached slowly, her heels clicking against the uneven ground. Her sharp features were even more pronounced up close, her piercing eyes locking onto mine like lasers. "Well, well," she said coolly, her voice laced with mockery. "If it isn't Ms. County Inspector herself." "Ms. Wexler," I responded evenly, keeping my tone professional despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "Care to explain why your association decided to illegally construct a gas station on my land?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying me as though I were a bug under a microscope. "Let's not get dramatic, dear. The HOA acted in the best interest of the community. That vacant lot has sat unused for years. Wouldn't you rather see it put to good use instead of collecting weeds?" I clenched my fists at my sides, forcing myself to stay calm. "It's not yours to decide," I shot back. "You can't just seize someone's property because it suits your agenda. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Or did you assume I'd roll over and let you get away with it?" For a split second, her mask slipped. A flicker of uncertainty passed over her face before she masked it with disdain. "Be careful how you handle this," she warned, her voice dropping dangerously low. "People in this neighborhood value peace and cooperation. Going toe-to-toe with the HOA might make you unpopular." Her words hung in the air like a threat, but instead of intimidating me, they only strengthened my resolve. I leaned in slightly, my voice steady and unwavering. "Save your threats. I'll be filing formal complaints with both the city and state authorities. And trust me, they won't take kindly to this kind of corruption." Her silence spoke volumes. For the first time, I saw doubt creep into her expression. Maybe she hadn't expected me to fight back so fiercely. Or maybe she was realizing that picking a battle with someone who understood the rules better than she did wasn't such a smart move. As she turned and walked away, I felt a surge of triumph, but also a nagging sense of unease. This confrontation was just the beginning. Whatever happened next, I knew it wouldn't be easy. But one thing was certain. I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The days that followed my confrontation with Mrs. Wexler felt like walking through a minefield. Tension crackled in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Neighbors who usually greeted me warmly now avoided eye contact or hurried past when they saw me coming. Even Linda, who had initially supported me, seemed hesitant to talk openly about what was happening. It wasn't hard to figure out why. Word travels fast in small neighborhoods like Maplewood Court, and I could almost hear the whispers behind closed doors. Some people admired my courage for standing up to the HOA. Others thought I was stirring up trouble better left alone. The divide between us grew wider with each passing day, but I refused to let it deter me. If anything, their fear only reinforced how much power the HOA wielded, and how important it was to challenge them. I spent hours poring over documents, gathering evidence, and reaching out to colleagues at work. My position as a county inspector gave me access to resources most residents didn't have, and I used every tool at my disposal. Zoning maps, permit applications, communication records. It all painted a damning picture of corruption and abuse of authority. But I knew paperwork alone wouldn't be enough to take down someone like Mrs. Wexler. She thrived on control, and exposing her misdeeds would require more than just facts. It would need unity. That's when I decided to reach out to other affected neighbors. At first, I was nervous. Would they trust me? Or would they side with the HOA out of fear? To my surprise, many were eager to talk once I assured them confidentiality. One elderly couple revealed they'd received threats regarding their property if they didn't comply with HOA demands. Another family showed me photos of unauthorized utility lines running through their backyard, installed without permission under the guise of community improvement. Each story added fuel to the fire burning inside me. This wasn't just about one illegal gas station. It was about years of systemic bullying and manipulation. People had been silenced for too long, afraid to speak out against an organization that claimed to protect their interests while trampling over their rights. But together, we could change that. We began meeting secretly, in basements, garages, and quiet corners of local parks. Slowly, a coalition formed. Some members were cautious, worried about retaliation. Others were angry, ready to fight tooth and nail. We shared stories, brainstormed strategies, and drafted petitions demanding accountability from the HOA. Every meeting brought new revelations and strengthened our resolve. Meanwhile, the construction site sat eerily silent. Without workers bustling around, it looked like a ghostly skeleton, a reminder of everything wrong with this situation. Yet even in its stillness, it loomed large over the neighborhood, casting shadows both literal and metaphorical. It was a symbol of unchecked power, but also of resistance. Every time I looked at it, I reminded myself why I couldn't give up. One evening, as I prepared for another secret meeting, there was a knock at my door. Standing outside was Mr. Patel, a soft-spoken neighbor who lived 3 houses down. He often waved hello while tending to his garden, but we'd never spoken much beyond pleasantries. Tonight, however, his expression was serious. "I heard what you're doing," he said quietly, glancing around as though expecting someone to overhear. "And I want to help." Relief flooded through me. With each new ally, the weight pressing down on my shoulders grew lighter. Together, we weren't just fighting for justice. We were reclaiming our community. And no matter how hard Mrs. Wexler tried to hold on to her power, she couldn't silence all of us. Not anymore. The night of the town hall meeting arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation. The community center, a small, unassuming building usually reserved for holiday parties and bake sales, was packed to capacity. Neighbors squeezed into folding chairs, while others stood along the walls or spilled out into the hallway. Whispers buzzed like static electricity, a mix of excitement, fear, and curiosity filling the room. I sat near the front with Linda, Mr. Patel, and a few other members of our coalition. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the stack of documents we'd prepared. Each page represented weeks of late-night research, phone calls, and quiet conversations. This was it, the moment where everything came together. Mrs. Wexler and her board members took their seats at the front of the room, looking calm but guarded. If they were nervous, they didn't show it. Mrs. Wexler adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat before addressing the crowd. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice smooth and polished. "We're here tonight to discuss recent concerns about the HOA's activities." Her tone dripped with condescension, as if this were nothing more than a minor misunderstanding that could be brushed aside. But when it was our turn to speak, things changed quickly. One by one, members of our group stepped forward, sharing their stories with raw honesty. An elderly woman recounted how she'd been fined repeatedly for refusing to remove a tree in her yard, a tree the HOA later admitted they wanted gone because it blocked the view of the proposed gas station. A young father described receiving anonymous letters warning him not to oppose the project, claiming his family would face consequences if he didn't stay quiet. Another neighbor revealed how utility lines had been rerouted through his property without consent, leaving behind damaged landscaping and unresolved safety hazards. Each testimony drew murmurs from the audience, growing louder with every revelation. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing between us, and the HOA board. For years, many had suspected something wasn't right, but hearing the truth laid bare was shocking. When it was my turn, I stood up, clutching the rejected permit application and property deed. "This is my land," I said, projecting my voice so it carried across the room. "And this document proves the HOA knowingly broke zoning laws to build on it. They falsified records, ignored legal rejections, and trespassed, all while pretending to act in the best interest of the community." I held up copies of emails showing secret negotiations between the HOA and contractors. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then I turned to the screen behind me, projecting images of the illegal construction site alongside official maps marking property boundaries. There was no denying it. The evidence was overwhelming. Mrs. Wexler tried to intervene, attempting to paint us as troublemakers bent on undermining progress. "Surely, we can all agree that these accusations are exaggerated," she said, forcing a smile. "Let's focus on finding solutions instead of assigning blame." But the tide had already turned. Voices erupted from the audience, shouting accusations and demanding answers. Someone yelled, "Why should we trust you?" Another chimed in, "Resign. All of you." Chaos unfolded as tempers flared. Board members exchanged panicked looks, realizing they were losing control. One by one, several of them quietly slipped out of the room, unable to withstand the pressure. By the end of the night, only Mrs. Wexler remained, sitting stiffly in her chair, her mask of authority shattered. As the meeting adjourned, neighbors gathered around us, thanking us for speaking out. Some apologized for doubting us earlier. Others promised to support whatever action came next. It was clear the HOA's grip on Maplewood Court was crumbling. Walking home that night, I felt a surge of hope. We weren't just fighting against injustice. We were fighting for something bigger. Unity, transparency, justice. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. In the weeks following the explosive town hall meeting, the fallout spread like wildfire. The once unshakable facade of the HOA crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. Mrs. Wexler, who had always exuded confidence and control, now seemed like a cornered animal. She avoided eye contact with neighbors, ducking into her car quickly whenever she was spotted leaving her house. Rumors swirled that she'd hired a lawyer, though no one knew whether it was to defend herself or prepare for retaliation against us. Meanwhile, the coalition we'd built grew stronger. Neighbors who had been hesitant to join our cause initially began reaching out, eager to lend their voices. Some offered to testify if legal action became necessary. Others helped distribute flyers around the neighborhood, spreading awareness about the HOA's misconduct. Even those who weren't directly involved started asking questions about finances, decision-making processes, and years of questionable practices. It was as if a dam had burst, releasing pent-up frustration and distrust. City officials took notice too. Armed with our evidence, I filed formal complaints with both municipal authorities and state agencies. Investigators arrived within days, combing through records and interviewing residents. They discovered discrepancies in the HOA's financial reports. Money earmarked for community projects had mysteriously vanished. There were also ties between certain board members and local contractors, suggesting kickbacks and favoritism. Every new revelation added fuel to the fire. Mrs. Wexler tried to fight back, issuing statements accusing us of exaggerating the situation and undermining community harmony. But her words rang hollow. People had seen the truth for themselves, and they weren't buying her excuses anymore. When another emergency meeting was called, attendance was even higher than before. This time, though, the atmosphere felt different. Instead of fear, there was resolve. Instead of silence, there were demands for accountability. At the meeting, one by one, board members stood up and resigned. Some apologized profusely, claiming they'd been misled or pressured into compliance. Others simply walked out without explanation, unable to face the angry crowd. By the end of the night, only Mrs. Wexler remained, isolated at the front of the room. Her usual poise was gone, replaced by desperation. "You don't understand what you're doing," she snapped, her voice trembling. "This neighborhood needs structure. Without it, everything falls apart." "No," someone shouted from the audience. "What this neighborhood needs is honesty and respect." The room erupted in agreement, drowning out whatever else she might have said. That night, she submitted her resignation, effectively dissolving the old HOA leadership. For the first time in years, Maplewood Court felt free. But the battle wasn't over yet. Legal proceedings loomed ahead, promising months, if not years, of hearings, settlements, and negotiations. The gas station site still sat abandoned, its skeletal frame serving as a stark reminder of greed and corruption. Cleaning up the mess they'd left behind would take time, effort, and patience. Still, something remarkable had shifted. Where fear and division once reigned, hope and solidarity began to take root. Conversations that used to revolve around petty grievances now focused on rebuilding trust and creating a better future. At block parties and coffee mornings, people laughed together again, sharing stories instead of secrets. For me personally, the experience changed everything. I went from being just another neighbor to becoming someone willing to stand up for what was right, even when it meant standing alone. My job as a county inspector gave me insight into how systems worked, but this fight taught me something far more valuable: the power of unity. Together, we proved that no institution, not even one as entrenched as the HOA, was above accountability. One evening, as I stood in my backyard watching the sunset, I glanced toward the empty lot where the gas station should have been. The scars of bulldozers and concrete foundations still marred the earth, but beyond them lay possibility. Maybe someday that land could become something beautiful: a park, a garden, or simply open space for everyone to enjoy. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure: Maplewood Court wasn't perfect anymore. And maybe that was exactly what it needed to be. Months later, the gas station site still stood abandoned, its skeletal structure rusting under the elements. It became a symbol of everything that had gone wrong, and everything we'd fought to overcome. But life in Maplewood Court began to change in ways I hadn't expected. Slowly, the cracks in our neighborhood started to heal, replaced by something stronger and more genuine. With the old HOA leadership gone, a new board emerged. People who actually cared about the community rather than their own agendas. They held open meetings where everyone's voice mattered, not just those with money or influence. Decisions were made transparently, with input from residents. The first order of business: tearing down the half-built gas station and cleaning up the mess it left behind. It wasn't easy. Legal battles dragged on as investigators unraveled years of corruption within the HOA. Contractors who had worked on the project faced fines for ignoring safety regulations, while several former board members were banned from holding positions in any homeowners association again. Mrs. Wexler disappeared from public view altogether, retreating into obscurity. Some said she moved away. Others whispered she was too ashamed to show her face. But even as justice unfolded, the real transformation happened quietly, between neighbors. Conversations that once revolved around rules and restrictions now focused on connection and care. People organized volunteer days to repaint fences, plant trees, and clean up shared spaces. Kids played freely in yards without worrying about violation notices pinned to their front doors. For the first time in years, Maplewood Court felt like a neighborhood, not just a collection of houses bound by rigid guidelines. As for me, my role evolved beyond being a county inspector. Word spread about how I'd helped expose the HOA's misconduct, and soon I found myself invited to speak at conferences, workshops, and community forums. My story resonated with people facing similar struggles: overbearing associations, unchecked power, and the feeling of helplessness when standing up to authority. I didn't consider myself a hero. I was just someone who refused to stay silent. But hearing others say they drew strength from my actions reminded me why this fight had been worth it. One day, while walking through the empty lot behind my house, I noticed something unexpected. Someone had planted wildflowers there, bright bursts of yellow, purple, and red swaying gently in the breeze. A small sign stuck in the dirt read, "For Maplewood." I smiled, realizing it wasn't just flowers taking root. It was hope. Over time, that patch of land transformed into a shared garden maintained by neighbors. Families gathered there during weekends, tending to plants or simply enjoying the fresh air. The scars of bulldozers faded beneath layers of soil and greenery, replaced by laughter and camaraderie. What could have been a source of division instead became a place of unity, a testament to what happens when people come together for the greater good. Looking back, I realized that perfection isn't what makes a neighborhood special. It's the imperfections, the challenges overcome, the bonds forged, the resilience shown, that truly define a community. Maplewood Court wasn't flawless anymore, but maybe it never needed to be. Its beauty lay in its humanity, in the way we learned to stand together despite our differences. Standing in my backyard one evening, I watched the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. Beyond the fence, the garden bloomed vibrantly, alive with color and life. Somewhere nearby, children laughed as they chased each other through sprinklers, their voices carrying on the warm summer breeze. This wasn't the picture-perfect neighborhood I dreamed of when we first moved in, but it was something better. A place where authenticity mattered more than appearances, where courage triumphed over fear, and where ordinary people proved that even the smallest voices can spark extraordinary change. And as long as we kept looking out for each other, Maplewood Court would continue to grow. Not perfect, but proud.